Hi everyone. In this module, we are going to discuss about the development of the gut. Okay, the gut development. We have to discuss about the liver, development of liver. Then pancreas. Then we will discuss the development of kidney, the renal development. Okay. Then we will discuss about the development of gonads. Okay, gonads. Okay. So these are the topics which we are going to discuss in this video module. Okay. So first we will move on to the gut development. Okay. If you take the gut, from where the gut tube will develop. The gut tube will develop. The gut tube will develop from the. It will develop from the endoderm of the yolk sac. Okay, endoderm of the yolk sac. Right. You know, in the third week there will be folding of the embryo. Right, folding of the embryo, and this is the cranial fold. This is the lateral fold, and this is the caudal fold. Okay, right. This cranial fold will forms the foregut. The lateral fold, okay, lateral fold forms the midgut, and the caudal fold, it forms the hindgut. Understand? Okay, so the cranial fold will forms the foregut, lateral fold midgut, and caudal fold forms the hindgut. Right. So we will be first discussing the development of foregut, followed by development of midgut, and then the hindgut. Okay, right. Before that, let me tell you the foregut. It extends from the oral cavity to the upper half or the cranial half of the upper half of the duodenum. Okay, this is the extension of foregut from oral cavity up to the first half of duodenum, which is the arterial supply. The arterial supply is by the celiac trunk. Okay, celiac trunk. Right. Now, which is the nervous supply? The nervous supply, the sympathetic nervous supply is the greater splanchnic nerve. Okay, greater splanchnic nerve. That is from T5 to T9. Okay. Then parasympathetic is by the vagus nerve. Okay, vagus nerve. Okay, this is about the foregut. Now the this is the foregut tube. Okay, which has respiratory epithelium, hepatic bud. Okay, the pancreatic bud, dorsal and ventral pancreatic bud. This is the foregut tube. Okay, now moving on to the midgut. The midgut will start from the lower half of duodenum. Okay, lower half of duodenum, and it will extend up to the transverse colon. Okay, transverse colon. That is the right 2/3 of the transverse colon. Okay, up to the right 2/3 of the transverse colon. Okay, and what is the arterial supply? Arterial supply is by superior mesenteric artery. Okay, superior mesenteric artery. And the nervous supply, sympathetic nervous supply is by the lesser splanchnic nerve. Okay, lesser splanchnic nerve. That is the T10 to T11 segments. Okay, and the parasympathetic is by vagus. Okay, this is about the midgut. Now coming to the hindgut. Hindgut will extend from the transverse colon. Okay, transverse colon, the left 1/3 of the transverse colon, and till the anal canal. Okay, till the anal canal. So the artery which supplies is the inferior mesenteric artery. Okay, inferior mesenteric artery. Nervous supply, the sympathetic is by the least splanchnic nerve. Okay, which is the T12 segment. Then parasympathetic is by the sacral nerves S2, S3 and S4 will give the parasympathetic supply. So this is about the foregut, midgut and hindgut, right? Now I am passing on to the development of the foregut, okay? So this is the foregut tube, right? This is the foregut tube and there is a respiratory diverticulum or the laryngeotracheal diverticulum, okay? Can you see here the respiratory diverticulum? This marks the beginning of the development of the respiratory system, right? But this diverticulum will divide the foregut tube into the pre-laryngeal segment, okay, and the post-laryngeal segment, okay. The part that is above the respiratory diverticulum forms the pre-laryngeal segment and the part that below the respiratory diverticulum forms the post-laryngeal segment. Understand, right? This pre-laryngeal segment will give rise to the structures in neck and head, okay, head, neck and face, okay. Whereas the post-laryngeal segment, it will forms the gut, okay, it will forms the digestive organs and the as well as the associated glands, okay, right? Now, if you take this laryngeotracheal diverticulum, okay, this laryngeotracheal diverticulum, it is like this, okay, one diverticulum is formed from the, and this is the foregut tube, right? First, a transverse ridge will start to appear, okay, a transverse ridge will start to appear in the laryngeotracheal diverticulum, and this is called as the tracheoesophageal ridge, okay, tracheoesophageal ridge, okay. This tracheoesophageal ridge then later changes into tracheoesophageal septum, okay, it changes into tracheoesophageal septum, right? Tracheoesophageal septum, right? And this will divide the trachea and so the anterior part will be forms the trachea and the posterior part forms the esophagus, right? Now what happens if this septum is displaced posteriorly? If it is displaced posteriorly, there will be the tracheoesophageal septum is displaced posteriorly. It forms what? It forms or there will be esophageal atresia. Esophageal atresia. What happens when there is esophageal atresia? There will be dysphagia or there is no swallowing, okay. That will lead to what? That will lead to polyhydramnios, okay. Will lead to polyhydramnios, okay, right? So this is what is happening if there is posterior displacement of the tracheoesophageal septum leading to esophageal atresia, okay. Now coming to the development of stomach. Okay, so you have seen the foregut tube, okay. So around the distal part of the foregut tube, a fusiform dilatation will be formed, okay, a fusiform dilatation, okay. If we take this dilatation, this is a midline dilatation, okay, and this dilatation it is like this, okay, it is connected ventrally with the help of ventral mesogastrium and dorsally with the help of dorsal mesogastrium. Understand? There is a fusiform dilatation in the midline which is connected ventrally with the help of ventral mesogastrium and dorsally with the help of dorsal mesogastrium. Okay. Now this fusiform dilatation will undergo a clockwise rotation. Okay. It will undergo a clockwise rotation in the vertical axis. Okay. Vertical axis. That means it will rotate in a vertical axis in clockwise direction. Now what happens? The ventral end, they will becomes the right surface. Okay, the ventral surface will become the right surface, whereas the dorsal surface, it will become the left surface. Okay, understand? The ventral or the anterior surface, it will become the right surface or right border, the dorsal or the posterior border will become the left border. Okay, understand? And this left border, it will grows rapidly. Okay, it will grows rapidly so that they'll be more in length and they will become superficial. Okay, and this, the left border is called as the greater curvature, and the right border that has grown slowly, that is called as the lesser curvature. Okay, right border is the greater curvature and left border is the lesser curvature. Right, now this tube will undergo another rotation. Okay, it will undergo another rotation, that is in the antero-posterior axis. Okay, like this, it is going to rotate like this, the antero-posterior axis. Right, now what happens? When there is a rotation in the antero-posterior axis, the upper end comes to the left. Okay, left and anterior. Whereas the lower end, they will goes right and posterior. Okay, which is the upper end, the cardiac end. Okay, so the cardiac end is most superficial. Okay, and the right or the lower end is the pyloric end. Okay, which will goes right and posterior. Understand about the rotation? Now coming to the mesogastrium, right? The ventral mesogastrium becomes what? The ventral mesogastrium will accommodate what all? We know that there is lesser omentum because the ventral side is the lesser curvature. Okay, the ventral border has become the left border, right? So it will enclose the lesser omentum. Then it will have the falciform ligament. Then the coronary ligament. The ligaments on the left, on the right side. Okay, coronary ligament and triangular ligament. These are the contents in the ventral mesogastrium. Right, now coming to the dorsal mesogastrium. If you take the dorsal mesogastrium, it has greater omentum. Then it has the gastrophrenic ligament. It has the gastrosplenic ligament and the leno-renal ligament. Leno-renal ligament. Okay, so these are the contents in the gastral mesogastrium. Oh, sorry, dorsal mesogastrium. Understand? Ventral mesogastrium and dorsal mesogastrium. So now what happens if there is hypertrophy of the muscles in the subpyloric region? Where you will get the swelling? You can get the swelling in the right costal margin. Okay, right costal margin swelling will present as hypertrophy in the subpyloric region or pyloric hypertrophy. Okay, or hypertrophic pylorus. Okay, so you will get the swelling in the right costal margin. Okay, so this is about the development of stomach. Understand? The development of duodenum. Okay, development of duodenum. We know the first half of duodenum is developed from the upper half is developed from the foregut. The lower half is developed from the midgut. Okay, lower half from the midgut. Right, so the upper half of duodenum is formed from the foregut and lower half formed from the midgut. So what will be the arterial supply? The arterial supply will be by two arteries, right? By the celiac trunk and by the superior mesenteric artery. Okay, so both will give arterial supply to the duodenum. Okay, right? Now, due to the rotation of stomach, okay, due to the rotation that is happening to the stomach, the duodenum will form a C-shaped loop. Okay, it will form a C-shaped loop. Okay, C-shaped loop. Okay, and it will comes and lies where? Lies in right side of abdomen. Okay, right side of the abdomen. Okay, so if we take the duodenum, ventral mesentery of the duodenum forms the hepato. One second. Okay, so the ventral mesentery of the duodenum forms the hepatoduodenal ligament. Okay, whereas the dorsal mesentery, this is the mesoduodenum, it will disappear. Okay, what happens when the dorsal mesentery disappears? The duodenum will be pushed to the dorsal side, or it will get attached to the, because there is no ligament there, right? So it will be attached to the, or it will push to the dorsal side. That means it becomes a retroperitoneal, right? The duodenum becomes retroperitoneal. Understand? So this is about the development of duodenum. Understand? It is formed from the low foregut as well as the midgut, right? And it's attached ventrally, or the ventral mesentery forms the hepatoduodenal ligament, and dorsal mesentery disappears, making the duodenum a retroperitoneal organ. Understand about the duodenal development? Now coming to the development of liver. Okay, right? So if you take the whole liver, it will develop from two structure. One is the hepatic bud of from the foregut tube. Then you have the septum transversum. Okay, which is a derivative of the mesenchyme. Okay, so the hepatic bud from the foregut tube will forms what? The hepatic, if you, this was our foregut tube, right? This is the hepatic bud. Okay, this hepatic bud will started to grow cranially. Okay, it will started to grow cranially and becomes bifid. Okay, it will grow and becomes bifid. Bifid means what? One becomes bifid. Okay, one it will form the left lobe of liver. Next forms the right lobe of liver. Okay, right lobe. One forms the right lobe. Next forms the left lobe. Okay, one forms the right lobe and next forms the left lobe. Okay, now a small bud that will be arise from this hepatic diverticulum, and that we call it as the cystic bud. Okay, so a cystic bud will arise from the hepatic diverticulum. So this cystic bud will give rise to the gallbladder and the cystic duct. Okay, right? So if you take the from the hepatic bud, which all structures will be formed? Or from the endoderm? From the endoderm, the hepatocytes. Okay, hepatocytes and the extra biliary tree. Okay, or the not extra biliary, I can say biliary tree. Okay, so the hepatocytes and the biliary tree will arise from the hepatic bud or the endoderm. Understand? Hepatocytes and biliary tree. From the mesenchyme or the septum transversum, you will get the connective tissue, the Kupffer cells, right? The hematopoietic cells. Okay, they will develop from the septum transversum, right? So hematopoiesis, it will start from 6th week. Okay, and the bile formation, it will start from the 11th to 12th week. Okay, development of pancreas. Okay, so the foregut at the distal or along the midgut foregut junction, you have something called as the ventral bud of pancreas and dorsal bud of pancreas. Okay, due to the rotation of this foregut tube, what happens? The ventral bud moves dorsally. Okay, it will move along the back side of the foregut tube. Okay, moves dorsally and comes and lies below. Okay, comes and lies below what? Below the dorsal bud. Okay, that means this bud will move here and comes and lies here. Okay, right. And from this ventral bud, the head of pancreas and the uncinate process will form. Okay, head of the pancreas and uncinate process will be formed. Okay, and from the dorsal bud, the body and tail will form. Understand? Right. Now, coming to the duct of pancreas. Okay, duct of pancreas. There are two ducts, right? You have a major duct and a minor duct. Okay, so the major duct will drains the distal part of the dorsal bud, that is from the body and tail. Okay, the distal part of the body and tail. Then it also drains the ventral bud, that is the head. Okay, so the major duct will drains the distal part of the dorsal bud as well as the ventral bud and drains into what? Into the major duodenal papillae. Okay, and that is the duct of Bursa. Okay, Bursa. The minor duct of pancreas. Okay, that is the Santorini. It will drains from the proximal part of the dorsal bud. Okay, proximal part of the dorsal bud, and it will drains into the minor duodenal papillae. Okay, so this is about the duct of the pancreas, right? So I told you from where the pancreas develop. Okay, and about the ducts of the pancreas. Now coming to some of the congenital anomalies associated with pancreas. Okay, congenital anomaly. The first one is pancreatic divisor. What is meant by pancreatic divisor? Here the both lobes are separated. That is, they are not fused together. Okay, so both lobes are separated, and this is the most common congenital anomaly in case of pancreas. Okay, right. So what can you see? The ventral bud. Okay, the ventral bud, they will drains into the major duodenal papillae, and the dorsal bud, that will drains into the minor duodenal papillae. Okay, papillae. That is the first one, pancreatic divisor, right? The second one, what happens to second one? Here, there are two ventral buds. Okay, two ventral buds. Okay, one ventral bud will follows the normal path, that is goes behind the duodenum, right, and comes and attached to the dorsal bud. Okay, one ventral bud will take the normal path. Okay, that is they comes behind the duodenum and comes and attached to the dorsal bud. The second ventral bud comes in front of the duodenum, or comes and the ventrals comes through the ventral side of the duodenum. Okay, they will come through the ventral side of the duodenum and comes and attached to the dorsal bud. So what can you see? Can you see an ring formed? The pancreas will form a ring structure around the duodenum, and this is called as annular pancreas. Okay, this is a second condition where you have two ventral buds. Okay, condition where you have two ventral buds. One ventral bud will take the normal pathway and comes and attach dorsal bud. The next ventral bud will take the ventral pathway and comes and attach to the dorsal bud. Right? So that the pancreas will form a ring around the duodenum. Okay. Right? So what are the complications? You can say there will be obstruction. Okay. Obstruction. Second one, there will be increased chance of peptic ulcers. Okay. In case of annular pancreas. Understand? In the third stage, fixation of the structures occur. Okay. Fixation of the structures occur. What do you mean by fixation of the structures? Here what happens is that the cecum that is present in the subpyloric region, okay, it will extend downwards. Okay, it will extend downwards. Okay, and when the cecum extend downwards, what you get? You get the ascending colon. Okay, so the ascending colon is formed by the downward extension of the cecum, right? And this new cecum will goes and lies in the right iliac fossa. Okay, the cecum now will lies in the right iliac fossa. Okay, cecum becomes the content of right iliac fossa. Right? Okay, right iliac fossa. Now what happens is that the mesentery, so okay, the mesentery of cecum, ascending colon, and the duodenum. Okay, the mesentery of cecum, ascending colon, and the duodenum is lost. Okay, so that or disappear, so that these three structures become retroperitoneal. Okay, whereas the other structures, okay, the structures like transverse colon, ileum, jejunum, they will retain their mesentery. Okay, these three structures as cecum, ascending colon, and duodenum, they will lose their mesentery, forming retroperitoneal structures. Okay, so this is the stages of development: first stage, second stage, and third stage. Okay, now coming to the abnormalities or anomalies of midgut development. Okay, the first one is called as the omphalocele. What is happening in omphalocele? This is a condition occurs due to the persistence of physiological hernia. That is the midgut lobe that entered into the vitellointestinal or entered into the yolk sac via the vitellointestinal tract. They fail to reduce. Okay, so what you can see the intestine. Okay, the intestines with the sac that is present as the hernia. Sac means what? It means the you have that covering, right? The peritoneal covering around the intestine. Then you have the Wharton's jelly. Then you have the amnion. Okay, all these structures will cover the intestine. That is called as a sac. Okay, then along with this physiological hernia, this is associated with other anomalies like chromosomal abnormality, neural tube defect, and cardiac anomalies. Okay, so these anomalies are seen associated with the omphalocele. Second abnormality is gastrochosis. This occurs due to the defect in the anterior abdominal wall development. Okay, abdominal wall development. Okay, can you tell me which is the weakest point in case of the anterior abdominal wall development? That is the point from where the right umbilical vein regress. Okay, so the point of the right umbilical vein regression, point of right umbilical vein regression. Okay, that is the weakest point. Okay, that point is weak, right? So the intestine will herniate via this point. Okay, right? So the intestine will herniate, right? So here, can you see any sac? No, only the intestinal loops will be present, okay? Intestinal loops will be present, right? So what are the complications associated with this gastroenteritis? Here you can see there will be intestinal obstruction, okay? That is a condition that is the chances of intestinal obstructions are high in case of gastroenteritis, okay? Right? So this is about the defects that occur in the first stage, okay, where the physiological hernia formation occurs. Now coming to the anomalies in this second stage. Right? So in second stage, the first one is non-rotation of the midgut. Okay, non-rotation of the midgut. What happens here? Here the midgut will fail to rotate. Okay, such that the pre-arterial segment, which forms the small intestine, okay, it forms the small intestine, they will comes and lies at the left side. Okay, whereas the large intestine will comes and lies at the right side. Okay, the pre-arterial segment will comes and lies at the left side, which will forms the intestines. The post-arterial segment will comes and lies at the right side, which forms the large intestine. Right now, what happens? Here, you know, the cecum is now at which side? At the right side, right? So the cecum will attach to the posterior abdominal wall. I told you the mesentery will disappear, so it will get attached to the posterior abdominal wall with the help of a band called as the Ladd's band. Okay, the help of a band called as the Ladd's band, right? Since the cecum is in which area? It is in the subhepatic area. The Ladd's band will obstruct what? It will obstruct duodenum, right? So it will lead to duodenal obstruction. Okay, that is happen when there is non-rotation. Now the next thing, if what happens if there is clockwise rotation? The rotation of the midgut is usually in the anti-clockwise, but what happens if there is clockwise rotation of the midgut? Due to the anti-clockwise, I told you the duodenum will goes and lies behind the superior mesenteric artery, and transverse colon will lies in front of the superior mesenteric artery, right? So if the rotation is clockwise, what happens? The duodenum will lies in front of the superior mesenteric artery, and the transverse colon, it will lies behind the superior mesenteric artery. Now what happens? This superior mesenteric artery, it will compress the transverse colon. Okay, it will compress the transverse colon. Okay, this happens when there is clockwise rotation of the midgut. Now coming to the anomalies of the third stage. Okay, the first anomaly is due to the movement of the extension of the cecum. Okay, or the cecal anomalies. Okay, what happens if the cecum doesn't migrate, doesn't move, extend to downward direction? So what you will get? You will get a subpyloric. Okay, spelling is wrong. So you will get a subpyloric cecum. Okay, you will get a subpyloric cecum. Okay, so if there is no extension, okay, no extension. What happens if there is incomplete extension? Incomplete extension will give rise to lumbar cecum. Okay, then what happens if there is excessive extension? Then what you will get? You will get a pelvic cecum. Okay, a pelvic cecum, right? Pelvic cecum. So this is the first anomaly due to the extension of this cecum, right? The second anomaly is due to the persistence of mesentery of anterior colon, ascending colon, okay, of ascending colon, right? If there is mesentery present in the ascending colon, due to this mesentery, the ascending colon loop will drag what? It will move and it will drag the cecum along with that, right? So that will lead to volvulus of cecum and ascending colon, right? Here the ascending colon, with the help of this mesentery, they will move. So they will carry this cecum along with them, which will lead to volvulus and intussusception, okay? Intussusception of the ileum into the cecum and ascending colon, okay? So these are the anomalies of the third stage, okay? Now I will tell you about some of the anomalies of vitellointestinal duct, okay? First one is, what happens if there is persistence of the vitellointestinal duct? So now I am going to speak about this persistence of vitellointestinal duct, okay? The first one is called as the Meckel's diverticulum. Here what is happening? Here the vitellointestinal duct is, this is the anterior abdominal wall. So here the vitellointestinal duct is persistent in the intestinal area. Okay, this is the intestinal loops. Okay, so the vitellointestinal duct is persistent in the intestinal area. Okay, in the anterior abdominal wall it forms a cord. Okay, so if you take the Meckel's diverticulum, it is actually follows the rule of 2. Okay, so I think you know what is Meckel's diverticulum. It is a persistence of the vitellointestinal duct in the intestinal side. Okay, rule of 2 means that it is seen in 2% of population. Then the Meckel's diverticulum is 2-inch size, right? It is present 2 centimeter proximal to ileocecal junction. So since it is 2 centimeter proximal to ileocecal junction, it is a ileal diverticulum. Okay, ileal diverticulum, right? Now what are the contents? The contents are the contents include gastric and pancreatic tissues. Okay, so gastric and pancreatic juices are produced from the Meckel's diverticulum, right? Since gastric and pancreatic juices are produced, it can lead to peptic ulcer. Complication include peptic ulcer. Since its wall is so thin, it can lead to perforation. Okay, now there are chances that this Meckel's diverticulum will herniates. Okay, if it herniates through the right inguinal canal, okay, right inguinal canal, it is called as what? It is called as the Litter's hernia. Okay, it's called as the Litter's hernia. Okay, so this is about the Meckel's diverticulum. It's a ileal diverticulum which occurs due to the persistence of the vitellointestinal duct, and it follows rule of 2. 2% population, 2-inch in size, 2 centimeter from the ileocecal junction. Contents include gastric tissues and pancreatic tissues, resulting in the production of the gastric juice and pancreatic juice lead to peptic ulcer, perforation. And if it herniates via the right inguinal canal, it is called as Litter's hernia, right? Second one is the vitellointestinal cyst. What is happening here? At the both ends, the vitellointestinal duct form a fibrous cord, but at the center there is a cyst formation. Okay, so a cyst that is formed in the vitellointestinal cord. Okay, the vitellointestinal duct, it is called as a vitellointestinal cyst. Understand? Next is the vitellointestinal. I'll write it next. Is the vitellointestinal fistula. Here what happens? Here the vitellointestinal duct is patent, okay? Patent connecting the umbilicus and the intestine, okay? Right? So it is a patent vitellointestinal duct which connects the umbilicus and the intestine, so that you can see the fecal matter at the umbilicus. Okay, fecal matter is present at umbilicus. Okay, so this is about the anomalies of the midgut, right? So with this we have completed the development of midgut. Now we are moving on to the development of hindgut. The hindgut, I told you, it is developed from the caudal bulge. Okay, caudal bulge, right? So here, this hindgut, it will form a diverticulum. Okay, diverticulum, that is called as allantois. And this allantois will forms the part of the umbilicus or the umbilical cord or the connecting stump. Okay, right? And this allantois will divide the hindgut into pre-allantoic part and post-allantoic part. Okay, right? So the pre-allantoic part, they will form the transverse colon. Transverse colon, which part? Left 1/3. Then descending colon, sigmoid colon, and upper part of rectum. Okay, upper half of rectum, right? So this much is formed from the pre-allantoic part. If you take the post-allantoic part, this is also called as the endodermal cloaca. Okay, it is called as the endodermal cloaca, which will be divided into two parts, okay, with the formation of a urogenital septum. Okay, can you tell me from where this urogenital septum arises? It arises from the intermediate mesoderm. Okay. Okay, so this urogenital septum will divide the endodermal cloaca into a primitive rectum and a urogenital sinus. Okay, into a primitive rectum and a urogenital sinus. From the urogenital sinus, okay, the urinary bladder and the urethra will develop. Okay, so from the urogenital sinus, you get urinary bladder and urethra. From the primitive rectum, okay, the upper part, sorry, the lower half of rectum, because the upper half of rectum is already developed from the pre-allantoic part. Okay, so the lower half of rectum and the upper half of anal canal will develop from the primitive rectum. Okay, lower half of rectum and the upper half of anal canal, okay, will develop from the primitive rectum. Understand? The lower half of rectum and the upper part of the anal canal will develop from the primitive rectum. Right? Now, caudal to this endodermal cloaca, you have an ectodermal cloaca. Okay. So this endodermal cloaca is separated from the ectodermal cloaca with the help of a anal membrane, okay, or cloacal membrane. Understand? Right? And from this ectodermal cloaca, it's also called as the proctoderm. From the ectodermal cloaca, the lower half of anal canal is formed. Okay, lower half of anal canal is formed, and the anal opening is formed from the anal pit. Okay, right? And this cloaca or the anal membrane, it will breaks at 9th week. Okay, so that the communication between the upper anal canal and lower anal canal is formed. Okay, right? So if you take the development of the anal canal, okay, you have an upper anal canal and a lower anal canal, right? The upper anal canal is formed from which part? It is formed from the endodermal cloaca, right? That means it is a endodermal derivative. Whereas the lower anal canal, it is formed from the ectodermal cloaca or the proctoderm. Okay, that means it is an ectodermal derivative. Understand the development of anal canal? First half is developed from endoderm and second half is developed from the ectoderm. Okay, now coming to the anomalies of the hindgut development. Okay, hindgut development. Anomalies of hindgut development. The first one is imperforated anus. Okay, imperforated anal opening. That means what? The anal membrane is not broken. Okay, the anal membrane is not broken. I told you by 9th week the anal membrane will breaks. Okay, and this communication between the the communication between the upper and lower anal canal is formed. Here the anal membrane is not broken or failed to rupture. Okay, or failed to rupture, resulting in the formation of an imperforated anus. Second one is megacolon. It's also called as what? It's also called as Hirschsprung's disease. What happens here? Here the parasympathetic ganglion, okay? Parasympathetic ganglion fail to migrate, okay? Migrate to the colon, okay? The parasympathetic ganglion will fail to migrate to the colon, okay? And so which is the now plexus that is going to affect? It is the Orbax or the Meissner's plexus, okay, will be absent, right? So the parasympathetic ganglion in the Orbax or the Meissner's plexus will be absent in case of megacolon, right? So the affected part will become narrow because there is no peristalsis of it, okay? Affected part will be narrow since there is no peristalsis, right? So what happened to the proximal part? The proximal part to this affected part, it will be dilated, giving rise to the appearance of a megacolon. Okay, this is called as megacolon or Hirschsprung's disease. Understand? So this is about the anomalies of hindgut. So we have completed the development of the gut tube. Okay, we have seen foregut, midgut, and hindgut. Okay, now we are moving on to the development of the renal system. Okay, now coming to the development of kidney. Can you tell me from where the kidney develops? The most part of the kidney will develop from the intermediate mesoderm. Okay. I have initially told you the intermediate mesoderm will give rise to two swellings. Okay. One is called as the genital ridge. Genital ridge, which will forms the gonads. And the second one is the urogenital septum. Okay. This urogenital septum will give rise to the kidney and the mesonephric duct and paramesonephric duct. Okay, paramesonephric. Okay, right. By 4th week, okay, by 4th week, the pronephros is formed. Okay, pronephros is formed. Okay, it is like this. Okay, pronephros is formed in the urogenital septum. Okay, and this will start functioning as the kidney, right? By the starting of 5th week, mesonephros is formed. Okay, mesonephros is formed by the starting of 5th week. Okay, and the mesonephric duct is formed from the mesonephros. Okay, this mesonephric duct will give rise to a diverticulum called as the ureteric bud. Okay, ureteric bud. This structure is very, very important because some parts of the kidney develop from the ureteric bud. Okay, and this mesonephros, it will function as kidney for 2 months. Okay, function as kidney for 2 months. Okay, by the end of 5th week, by 5th week end, the metanephros is formed. Okay, metanephros is formed. Okay, so here you get the metanephros, right? That is at the end of 5th week. Okay, and this metanephros will start function as kidney from 3rd month. Okay, from 3rd month, this metanephros will start to function as kidney. Okay, and from the metanephros, the secretory part of the kidney is formed. Okay, secretory part. So the secretory part, it includes the PCT, the loop of Henle, the DCT, and the collecting tubule. Okay, collecting tubule. It is formed from the metanephros. Right now, the secretory or the collecting part. Okay, the collecting part of kidney is formed from the ureteric bud. Okay, ureteric bud will form the collecting part, which includes the collecting tubule. Okay, then the minor calyx and major calyx, the renal pelvis, and up the ureter. Okay, ureter formed from the ureteric bud. Okay, the trigone, it is formed from mesonephric duct. Okay, mesonephric duct. The trigone is formed from the mesonephric duct. Okay, the angioblastic cells, okay, of the mesenchyme, angioblastic cells will migrate into the metanephros or metanephric blastema. They will give rise to the glomeruli, vasa recta, and the mesangial cells. Okay, mesangial cells, right? So the trigone is formed from mesonephric duct. The angioblastic cells will give rise to the glomeruli, vasa recta, and the mesangial cells. Right now, coming to the lower part of the renal system, which is a lower part of renal system. It is the bladder and urethra. Okay, they are formed from the. I told you they are formed from the urogenital sinus. Okay, the primary urogenital or the primitive urogenital sinus. Okay. The primitive urogenital sinus, it gives rise to 2 parts. Okay, one is called as the vesico-urethral canal, and the second one is the pelvic, not pelvic, this definite urogenital sinus. Okay, definite urogenital sinus. Definite urogenital sinus. Okay, and this vesico-urethral canal will give rise to the bladder, and the urethra is formed from both vesico-urethral canal as well as the definite urogenital sinus. Okay, this definite urogenital sinus is again divided into 2 parts. One is called as the pelvic urogenital sinus, second is the phallic urogenital sinus. Right. So coming to the male urethra, there are 3 male urethras. Okay, one is the prostatic urethra, then you have the membranous urethra, and last is the penile urethra. Okay, the prostatic urethra will develop from the vesico-urethral canal, membranous urethra from the pelvic urogenital sinus, and the penile urethra is from the phallic urogenital sinus. Right, and coming to the female urethra, it is from the urovesico-urethral canal plus the pelvic urogenital signs. Okay, so this is about the development of the kidney. I told you kidney from the metanephros, then the collecting part, so the secreting part is from the metanephron, the collecting part is from the ureteric bud, right? Then we have seen the trigone is from the mesonephric duct, the the glomerular mesangial cells and the vasa recta is from the angioblastic cells, right? Then the lower part is from the primitive urogenital signs. Okay, so this is about the development of kidney, right? Now move on to the anomalies. Okay, what happens if there is renal agenesis, that is the kidney is not formed or the rudimentary kidney is formed? It will lead to oligohydramnios. Okay, oligohydramnios. How? Because the fetal urine is the main source of the amniotic fluid, right? So since there is no fetal urine, since due to renal agenesis, it will lead to oligohydramnios. The second thing is about the horseshoe kidney. What is meant by horseshoe kidney? Here the lower pole of the kidney is fused together. Okay, how this happens? Kidney is developed in the caudal end of the embryo, that is in the sacral region or the pelvic region, right? And when this caudal end grows, we feel that the kidney will extends up, right? During this extension, okay, during the ascending up of the kidney, this this ascending up is hindered. Okay, this is hindered by the inferior mesenteric artery. Okay, inferior mesenteric artery hinders the ascending up of kidney, resulting in the fusion of the lower pole of kidney, giving rise to a horseshoe kidney. Okay, this is about the anomalies in the renal system. Now coming to the development of gonads, gonadal development, right? I told you from where the gonads are developed. It is from the epiblastic cells. Okay, the epiblastic cells forms the primordial germ cell at 3rd week. Okay, at 3rd week. Okay, and this primordial germ cell will start to migrate to the gonads at 5th week and reaches the gonads by 7th week. Okay, right? So the testis will start to develop from 7th week and the ovary will develop from 7th to 8th week. Okay, I'll say it as 8th week. Okay, understand? So the epiblast cells will give rise to the primordial germ cells which at 3rd week of the development of embryo, which will migrate by 5th week towards the gonads. Okay, and reaches the gonads by 7th week. From the 7th week itself, the testis will develop, and from the 8th week, the ovary will develop, right? What about the external genitalia? The external genitalia in case of males, they develop by 11th week, and in case of females, the external genitalia will develop by 14th week, right? So we can differentiate the male and female sex by 15th week. Understand? Right? So this is the gonadal development, and I will explain what is happening at each stage. Right? In males, what is there? We have the Y chromosome, and this Y chromosome carries a gene called as the SRY gene, and this SRY gene will produce the testis determining factors. Okay, testis determining factors. Right? So if there is if the Y chromosome is present, then only this TDF will be formed. Right? So this TDF is what is going to determine the gonad, or this is the factor which will determines whether the gonad should grow into a testis or an ovary. Understand? Right? Now, in case of a male, this TDS will influence 2 cells, that is the Sertoli cells and the Leydig cells. Okay, Leydig cells. Okay, it will influence the Sertoli cell to secrete the Mullerian inhibiting hormone or the anti-Mullerian factor, and the Leydig cells to secrete testosterone. Understand? Testosterone. Understand how it is happening? The TDF will influence Sertoli cell to secrete Mullerian inhibiting factor and the Leydig cell to secrete testosterone. Now, if you take the gonads till 5th week, you have a indifferent gonad. Okay, that means the gonad is not differentiated. Okay, and in this gonad, the coelomic epithelium migrates. Okay, and from where this gonad is formed? It is from the genital ridge. Okay, from the genital ridge. Okay, this the intermediate mesoderm will condense together to give rise to the genital ridge. Okay, to this genital ridge, the coelomic epithelium will migrate. Okay, and it will form sex cords in the genital ridge. Okay, it will form sex cords in the genital ridge, dividing the genital ridge into a outer cortex and an inner medulla. Okay, the sex cords will differentiate into outer cortex and inner medulla. Right. In case of if the primordial germ cell that reaches the gonad is sperms, okay, or because of this TDF, okay, the medullary cords will differentiate. Okay, medullary cords will differentiate. Okay, and the non-canalized part, it will give rise to the Sertoli cells and Leydig cells. Okay, right? The primordial germ cell is of XY, then it will give rise to Sertoli cells or Leydig cells. Okay, then if the canalized part will give rise to the seminiferous tubules. Understand? The medullary cords will differentiate, giving rise to the Sertoli and Leydig cells as well as the seminiferous tubules. Okay, right? What happens if the primordial germ cell that reaches the gonad is ovum? If it has XX, that means the cortical cords will differentiate. Okay, the cortical cords will differentiate, forming ovary. Understand? The development of gonads, if the XY is reaching, then they will the medullary cords will differentiate into testis. If the XX is reaching, then they will differentiate into the cortical cords will differentiate into ovary. Okay, now I'll list the embryonic structures and its male derivative as well as the female derivative, right? The first structure is the primordial germ cell. Okay, in male derivative is sperm and female derivative is ova, right? Second is the coelomic epithelium. Coelomic epithelium, in case of males, it will form the Sertoli cells, and in females, it forms the follicular cells. Okay, follicular cells. Okay, then the mesenchyme of the genital ridge. Okay, mesenchyme of genital ridge. It forms Leydig cells in males and theca cells in females. Okay, theca cells in females. Okay, the genital tubercle. It forms penis in males and clitoris in females. Okay. Fifth one, it is the genital swelling. It forms scrotum in males and labia majora in females. Okay. Sixth one, genital fold. It forms the ventral part of penis in males and labia minora in females. Okay, labia minora in females. Okay, seventh one, the mesonephric duct. This forms the canalicular part in males. Okay, canalicular part means the epididymis. Okay, the epididymis, vas deferens, vas efferentia, okay, the seminal vesicle, okay, that canalicular part is formed from the mesonephric duct in case of males, okay. In females, it forms the appendix of ovary, okay, and a vestigial structure called as the Gartner's duct. Gartner's duct, okay. Next is the paramesonephric duct, okay. In case of males, it forms the appendix of testis. In females, it forms the fallopian tube, uterus, and upper part of vagina. Okay, upper part of vagina. Right. Now, from where the lower part of vagina is formed? Lower part of vagina is formed from the urogenital sinus. Okay, urogenital sinus, which is a part of the endodermal cloaca. Okay, endodermal cloaca. Okay, so the lower part of vagina is formed from the urogenital sinus or of the part of the endodermal cloaca. Right. Now what happens to this testis? Where the testes are formed? Even though these are formed in the upper part of the abdominal cavity, they will descend down, okay, and occupies inside the scrotum. Okay, right? So if what happens if the testis fails to descend, it will lead to something called as rupture to descent. Okay, that is called as a failure of the descent of testis. Okay, right? So the testis, it is formed in the upper lumbar area, and it is present in the upper lumbar area till the 3rd month. It reaches the iliac fossa by 4th month. By 7th month, it reaches the deep inguinal ring, and it reaches the inguinal canal by 8th month, and by 9th month it reaches the scrotum. Okay, so this is the descent of testis, and I told you the failure of descent of testis will lead to the cryptorchidism, okay, or undescended testis. Okay, so with this we have completed the embryology part. Okay, we have seen the development of different structures like heart, the gut tube, the gonads, the renal system, everything, right? So now we will be moving to the histology part from the next module. Thank you, everyone.